Welcome to I Said What I Said. I'm Brad Wakai. That's Tyson Gentry. This is the NFL Week 15 reaction show. And Tyson, we are coming down to the wire. We got a ton to talk about. I mean, we got a banger of an NFL card this week, and I'm super excited. We're going to break down a ton of games. Most we have broken down on this show. We have other news about quarterback changes. Tyson and I want to give our thoughts on NFL wild card, coaching stuff. We got a ton to get to, brother. How you doing?
I'm good, man. It was a great weekend of football. Brad, if there's anybody else that we want to see benched, all we have to do is say that they shouldn't be, and we can make it happen.
Mahomes, no.
Maybe Carson Wentz should never take over for Pat Mahomes.
Right. So Tyson alluded to it. We will have to eat some crow a little bit on here, but that's fine. That's what we do. We don't hide. But first, we got to get to what we are talking about coming out of this weekend.
Just say it.
And Tyson, it's pretty much wrapped up in the AFC in terms of the playoff teams. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. But in the NFC, we're going to have some shuffling. And mainly this man, if you look up, Sean McVay, now has the Los Angeles Rams in first place in the NFC West. Start as 1-4. Everybody's banged up. It's a young offensive line. It's a defense that's, losing Aaron Donald. No way they can get there. And once again, this guy continues to showcase why he is one of the premier head coaches in the NFL. I know everybody loves Shanahan. And we love the little innovative offenses. Kevin O'Connell, who we really like here, is now the new number one guy. Mike McDaniel for the long time, just because the crazy stuff he was running. Woo, look at the shiny new toy. But people used to talk about McVay all the time. The shine has come off after the Super Bowl because they haven't gotten back to that point. I think that's when you should be saying this guy's the best coach in the NFL. I mean, after Andy Reid, what he continues to do with this aging roster, with the front office that went all in for the one Super Bowl and just kind of said, F those picks, right? That was the mantra. Had veterans getting hurt. And he's been able to slap a Band-Aid on it. Him and Matthew Stafford continue to go out there every single week and compete. It's once again, the Rams are proving why coaching matters in this league. And so I know people love the Shanahan thing. To me, it's McVay over Shanahan no matter what. He's got the ring like Tyson was pointing to if you're watching on YouTube. And I'm sorry, if you give McVay what they got to work with in San Francisco, I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs like I think old Kyle Shanahan's going to do this year.
No, he might not have let hubris get in the way of maybe pursuing other quarterback options. Neither here nor there. Brad, how big is Tier 2 amongst NFL head coaches?
It's huge.
Yeah. It's huge. I feel like everybody besides Andy Reid right now might be in Tier 2. But it is interesting with McVay. It took a long time, I think, for Harbaugh to finally get the love as a Super Bowl champion, and now it's he's unimpeachable. Tomlin had some rough moments, and then you look back and people are like, well, he won a Super Bowl ring, and Sean McVay starts out every season 1-4 lately, so that's probably part of it. But the dude is insane. And he's adding to how crazy this NFC wildcard playoff picture is shaping up. I am an idiot. I sat here a couple weeks ago and I said that I don't really see nobody's afraid of Bo Nix in the playoffs on the AFC side, and nobody's really afraid of Baker Mayfield or any of these other teams. Sure, the Packers are scary. Brad, nobody in the league wants to play Todd Bowles in a one-off situation. I thought this team was dead with the Evans and the Godwin injuries. They look awesome. I don't think anybody wants to see Jeff Hafley and that defense on top of a Matt LaFleur offense in the first round coming into your building. That feels unfair. The Washington Commanders, we bury them after they lose those 3 games, and it's well, they're done. And look, they didn't look impressive against the Saints, but they won the football game, and they have a massive game coming up here this week. I think that, sure, winning the conference is a huge boon, and you get the bye, but you also don't have you have to let them play somebody else, get a little bit more banged up, because you don't want a juiced up Todd Bowles or a juiced up Matt LaFleur or any of those guys walking into your building. This is going to be a bloodbath, and I think we're all a little quick right now to put the crown on the Philadelphia Eagles and the crown on the Detroit Lions and maybe the Minnesota Vikings. This group looks really scary.
I completely agree. I was thinking when, the Bucs just destroyed the Chargers. This has been a really good defense, and that offense was clicking on all cylinders. And I'm like, there is nobody that I want to play less. And we're Eagles fans here, and if you haven't known that, I mean, I did not want to see the Bucs. I did not want to see Todd Bowles. I cannot have the Eagles lose to the Bucs once again. That is my worst case scenario. And I'm with you. I thought they were dead. And then the Packers, They go into the bye week and they freaking come out of it, and Jordan Love is Tom Brady. Like, I don't know what goes on with Matt LaFleur down there, but freaking Jordan Love has just been special coming out of the bye week again, and that's a scary thought. So, and then like you said, I mean, the Rams might win the division. I don't think the Seahawks are necessarily scary, but let's say they get bumped out of there. God, I mean, they're just another scary team there. So, yeah, I agree with the NFC. That's going to be the banger side of the playoffs, in my opinion. So I'm with you, Tyson. I was an idiot for that too. We got to eat some crow here, folks. You know,
That's what we do.
That's what we do. And we got to talk about what just happened here, because there is some quarterback news that we got to dive into now.
Armchair quarterback.
And Tyson, the Atlanta Falcons, after we came on here and said, you can't bench Kirk Cousins, it's not time yet. Well, they decided it's time. They're going to go with Michael Penix, their first-round draft pick. We kind of unpacked the whole situation last week, so we're not going to go through that again. If you want to hear our comments, we'll touch on it a little bit on this because it kind of all ties in, but go listen to the real discussion we had last week when we were talking about the situation. Are you surprised by this decision? Let's start there.
If it happened a week ago, then I would have been. But we said all that stuff kind of under the assumption he wasn't going to look like that on a primetime game, not in front of everybody, because the NFL should have 2 games out there. So if you didn't see it, he was abysmal again. They win the football game, but if anybody besides Desmond Ridder was the quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders, they probably lose that football game. And it was like, okay, Bijan's got 125 yards. The Falcons are probably crushing. Drake London catches a 30-yard touchdown to start the game, and then you look up and you're like, oh, they only have 9 points, and this thing it's getting almost over. I think that they have to do this now because they are fighting for their playoff lives. 1, and then number 2, you got to get some juice back in that locker room. It's still a young team, especially in the offensive side of the football, and this is a guy that I didn't quite have the guts to put inside my top 2 of the quarterbacks pre-draft, but I did have him at number 3. I watched a ton of Michael Penix in college. I think he's awesome, and I think they're going to give him license to sling it. It's also not normal for this situation to happen when you're fighting for your playoff lives and you get to welcome the New York Giants. Like, it's a dream scenario for them. This is the only time really that I'm going to say a week 16 benching of your starting quarterback with the playoffs on the line makes sense.
Especially with the price tag that's attached to Kirk Cousins, too. Like, I think that's the other thing that we have to discuss here. But I'm with you from the pure football standpoint. If you're Raheem Morris, this is a dead team walking, right? Like, they are dead. They are dying. They are slowly watching their playoff hopes dwindle away. You need a shot of adrenaline, and that could be the rookie. I mean, big arm guy. He's going to put the ball in the tight windows. Like Tyson said, he watched a lot. So did I. You know, we're college football junkies. Go check out the show that we do for college if you are too. And I think 11 of 17 for Cousins is not bad. Why are you throwing the ball 17 times, though, against the Raiders defense? It's a clear lack of trust. Like you said, I know Bijan Robinson, 22 carries for 125, is averaging 5.7. But if you're going to be paying all that money to Kirk Cousins, you're not supposed to be a game manager who throws for 112 yards a pick. Like, you got the touchdown, like you pointed out. After that, it was horrible. That's not what you're supposed to be bringing him in to do. Like, this was supposed to be, this is the best roster you're going to win this division going away, especially when the Bucs got hurt. That has not been the case. And so from the perspective of, yes, the Atlanta Falcons need a shot in the arm, and they need to get going, and they need to figure out what can work and what doesn't, this is the right play. This also creates a scenario, though, going forward where there's a major problem in Atlanta. I mean, we talk about the contract, and we went through it last week, so details, go look it up if that's what you want to do. But this goes back to what we said. What the hell were they thinking bringing in Kirk Cousins if you had the plan to draft Michael Penix? It's brutal. It's stupid. Now everybody's going to point to, well, that's why you draft Penix. No, that's why you just freaking draft them and don't bring in Kirk Cousins for that much money. You could have gotten an edge rusher. You could have got an offensive lineman. Like, it just continues to point to the fact that this Atlanta Falcons front office thinks they're smarter than everybody, but in reality, they're talking to a brick wall because they're bragged about not wanting Lamar Jackson. Oh, no, we got Desmond Ridder.
They tweeted it. The team tweeted.
They bragged about, no, Bill Belichick, not the guy for us. Really? Okay, that's their decision. And then, they voluntarily state how, no, we got enamored with Michael Penix during the draft process. So why the hell did you give Kirk Cousins that money? Like, these guys are just so in over their head. And I feel bad for Arthur Blank. Now, it is his fault, but Tyson, holy smokes. I mean, he's a mafia guy. You got to start putting some heads to the stone here.
I think Terry Fontenot could talk me into doing something really stupid. He seems like maybe he's got a silver tongue. He got old Artie. He convinced him that this was the way. The saving grace here though is Michael Penix has played a ton of football. Like yes, he's a rookie and it's going to be different playing in the NFL, but it's not like your Anthony Richardson situation or even like the guy we're about to talk about. I mean, Michael Penix has played a ton of college football, so I'm excited to see how he does. Let's see what the target allocation looks like because Mooney was Kirk's favorite, and then last night on a must-have third down, the ball goes to Ray McLeod. I don't see Michael Penix doing that. I think that thing's getting force-fed at number 5.
I agree. So let's talk about Will Levis because he was also benched by the Tennessee Titans. Now, this is a guy that both of you have been bullish on. You know, you watch his tape, and it's like, God, he makes plays that you're like, you cannot teach, like Josh Allen-esque type of stuff. But he makes some of the stupidest decisions you'll ever see a quarterback make. It looks like he can't read a defense very well. He's gunslinger without the ability to have the accuracy of Brett Favre or Jordan Love, which concerns you. And ultimately, Brian Callahan, at this point in the season, was fed up enough to the point where he's going to give Mason Rudolph a look to run his offense, presumably. So what do you think about this from the Tennessee Titans standpoint? Or if you want to take it the Levis thing, I'll let you throw it to you, and we'll kind of take it from both angles.
Well, I think, the Will Levis era, so to speak, if that's what you want to call it, it's over in Tennessee, and it's not coming back. I don't imagine them going into next year. We'll see if he's even like on the team, but they're looking to replace him. Mason Rudolph plays, essentially he played well. He threw like 206 yards, something like that, and they scored 27 points against the Bengals defense that is much maligned, so that leaves a little bit to be desired. There was some Tajay Spears stuff, and that's kind of what we thought the offense was going to look like coming into the year. So sure, Will Levis maybe didn't get the most fair shake in the world, but he's kind of like the picture, that floats around where it's like if you could build a perfect NFL quarterback. You and I are approaching this, we're forgetting about the brain that's really important here. I think for Will Levis, he needs a Kevin O'Connell. Maybe even Brian Callahan. We'll see how this whole thing shakes out, but he could be your next in line of your Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. I think he's got to sit because it's not gotten any better over the last 2 years here. He's made the same mistakes. He's, to me, and I know you can't compare apples and oranges, but I see a little bit of Quinn Ewers, like how I think Quinn Ewers has been the same player since he was about 18 years old. I think Will Levis has been the same player for quite a while now, and he just needs a reset.
Yeah, and we'll get a ton of draft stuff. I know Tyson and I are chomping at the bit to get into that. I mean, that's some of our favorite period, and we have quite some takes on the quarterback class this year. But, for Will Levis, 8 of 12, 89 yards, 3 interceptions, a 1.1 QBR. I mean, it's just – you can't make these plays in the throws.
And they weren't normal picks. Like, let's not say that they were like, the ball hit 𝐾𝐭 in the hands. Like, they were bad interceptions.
They were bad. And one that went for a touchdown too, which is the worst. The pick sixes are bad. And that's the Will Levis special, man. Him and Matt Schaub are starting to racking those things up. But I agree with you. I think it's over in Tennessee for Levis. This is not a Callahan draft pick. Clearly, Callahan doesn't think that he's going to be able to run his offense, whatever iteration of that is. We'll see what happens with Rudolph. But, 21 to 26, 209 in relief. You're like, okay, you need to get the ball out of your hands. But, Tyson, I have questions about the Tennessee Titans and their vision going forward. You bring in Brian Callahan. He's supposed to be this offensive guru. If you can't fit – now, I know Will Levis is kind of like a wild stallion, and it's hard for some Cowboys to break him, right? Like, you need, like, the right Cowboy. And like you said, maybe you need O'Connell, maybe you need McVay, somebody. And, Callahan might not be the Cowboy, right? But if you can't do any sort of thing with Will Levis and you're supposed to be this offensive guru, does that give you a lot of confidence for you now you're going to handpick your quarterback in this draft class? I mean, it's kind of scary. I mean, do they trade for Kirk Cousins? Are you going to go down that route? Or are they going to be like the Colts, right, where you just are putting Band-Aids on things? Like, that's a scary notion. I think there'll be teams interested in Will Levis. But, Tyson, we talk about your shelf life as a quarterback, especially a young one. And you and I like to look at this as 3 years, and it's getting rapidly shrunk in the NFL now. His leash, I think, went from here to, if he can work, and if you're watching on YouTube, I'm putting my hands up like about a foot, all the way down, or if you're not watching on YouTube, I should say, to about a couple inches, right? Like, that's his leash now, because if you're struggling here, like if you go to the Raiders and struggle, you're maybe out of the league in a couple. So what do you think about that aspect, and what do you think about the future of Levis?
Yeah, I think that there could definitely be some suitors for him, but I don't think anybody's lining up right now to add him, especially not in a starting role. I really do see some sort of he can go back up, JJ McCarthy in Minnesota or something like that. And maybe they just do a quarterback swap there. I don't know the Tennessee Titans books right now off the top of my head as far as cap space goes, but I think you're short-sighted for sure if you're thinking about replacing him with a Shedeur Sanders or a Cam Ward or Carson Beck or Quinn Ewers or whoever it is in this draft class. I don't think that's going to work either, but you're kind of between a rock and a hard place because they have just beaten their heads into the wall, and it's the same comments Callahan made at the beginning of the season about Will Levis just rung true in week 15, and that's something that you can't have happen here. They go out and they get Calvin Ridley, they get L'Jarius Sneed, like it's a front office and an ownership group that wants to win football games, and it's been an abysmal season. They signed Tony Pollard. Like, you don't go out and sign a free agent running back expecting to win 4 or 5 games in the NFL.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. Titans 3-11 honestly could help them. I mean, they need offensive line help though. That's one thing for sure. They really do. So let's close here before we look ahead to the upcoming week's games. Lions get another brutal injury. I mean, David Montgomery torn MCL. He's going to miss the rest of the season. Had to get surgery. Gets another injury that they have. Aiden Hutchinson, he's already out with his knee injury. They're starting to pile up for the Lions, brother. Like, where's your mind at here for Detroit?
So this is like something that it gets lost a little bit. Like, it comes up towards the Super Bowl or towards the NBA Finals or the NCAA tournament, whatever it is. But like, winning championships is as much about luck as it is about like how your skill and resolve and all of that stuff. We're Eagles fans and we remember 2017 fondly, but you had to absolutely catch lightning in a bottle to win with the amount of injuries that the Philadelphia Eagles had that season. There's a reason that it doesn't happen very often. This whole defense is just beat to crap, and it's unfair for the Detroit Lions and their fans, but this is the reality of the NFL. There's been many teams over the last 15 years that felt like we had a Super Bowl stolen from us. Like, how many of those Drew Brees Saints teams just broke down towards the end of the season, or the Peyton Manning's Colts teams where all of a sudden you look up and half the defense is on the IR? That feels a little bit like what's happening. The dam finally broke against Josh Allen, the best player in the NFL right now, and they give up 48 points. But a defensive performance like this was coming. It's just very unfortunate for them that it's happening here at the end of the year. This is something they maybe could have withstood from week 5 to week 12, but from week 16 to the end of the season, it's going to be really tough. I'm not in any way, shape, or form counting them out from winning the Super Bowl. I'm just kind of I feel for them. It seems almost impossible right now to envision them winning the Super Bowl with this defense.
Yeah, Gibbs, he's going to get the workload. He's going to have to. And it's like the reason why that running game is so special is because they can do the 1-2 punch, right? What happens if you only have lightning?
That they do outside comes off like, oh, David Montgomery just beat you up through the middle for 3 quarters.
And now you don't have that. And now people are pointing to, well, when Montgomery was out, these are his stats without him. And they're like, oh, he should be getting the ball more. It's like, that's great in like a limited sample size. We're talking about you're going to have to be the workhorse for 3 more regular season games and then a playoff run. He hasn't done it before. And we'll see. Maybe he can do it. We don't know, but it's like you can't just go out and say, well, he's going to be better now because Gibbs is RB1. So there's a reason why the coaching staff who's in the building, who's putting together the game plan, works with these guys, is operating this aspect. So we'll see what that means going forward. Now, I think for the Lions, and before we move on here, Tyson, if you're going to get 38 of 59 for almost 500 and 5 tuds from Goff, like, you're going to be able to stay in games, right? Like, it's like you said, you just lost the probable MVP. You put up 48 points, was unworldly. Go watch that on all 22 because some of those throws were freaking insane. And it's like, yeah, if that's who the Lions are going to face, they're going to have a hard time stopping them. But if you're going to put up 42 points, and that's not against the Bills defense, who, listen, nobody's saying they're Steel Curtain or nobody's saying they're the 85 Bears, but it's not like they're slaps. Like, this isn't the Bengals defense. They're going to have a chance to win. And I know people are criticizing Dan Campbell for that onside kick. Did anybody watch that defense? Like, you got to manufacture some points here, guys. Like, this isn't just Madden. Like, you can't just go out there like he's like, guys, we got to get this football back or else we're in trouble. So he's always going to have a little riverboat in him, but I don't know. You get that offensive performance. We'll see if they can do it without Montgomery. But if Goff's playing like that, they're going to have a shot.
Well, I think that's another reason why the 1 seed is most important for them out of all the NFC teams, because now you're talking about like going on the road. If it is Philadelphia and Jared Goff has to go outside to Philadelphia in January, sure, he beat the Packers earlier in the season outside. The defense allowed 14 points. This defense isn't allowing 14 points, and all of a sudden you're in a whole different world. They can win a track meet still, but they're going to have a heck of a time winning a fist fight anymore.
Yeah, completely agree. Okay, let's look ahead. We got a ton of games we got to get to, most we've ever done on the preview show this year. So without further ado, let's start looking ahead to some marquee matchups.
Marquee matchups.
And let's start here. Thursday Night Football, the Denver Broncos versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers reeling after going to Tampa, getting smoked. I mean, that was pretty eye-opening, Tyson, don't you think? I think, on a short week, you're going to look at the favorite. You're going to look at the home favorite. That's kind of how it is. The Broncos weren't necessarily too impressive early on against the Colts. They figured it out. They had that insane pick six from that stupid trick play, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐜𝐫𝐿. Is anybody going to call him out for that?
No.
But, Bo Nix starting to come back to earth a little bit, right? He had that hot stretch. Chargers still are just missing that one game breaker. What are you looking for in this matchup?
Yeah, this will be really fun. I think that Los Angeles has to get back to who they want to be. I mean, they got absolutely crushed trying to run the football against the Tampa Bay team. Sure, they have a good rush defense, but it was like they just allowed 30 yards to the Los Angeles Chargers. This is disrespectful and something we haven't seen. And I think that the Broncos, yes, Bo Nix threw 3 picks, and it was probably the worst performance he's had in the last 3 months of NFL football. There's a lot of Marvin Mims, man, and I'm a big Mims guy, but I think you get back to looking for the big body number 14. Courtland Sutton, I think, will be a huge factor in this one, and it's 2 really good coaches on a short week, so that's exciting. And this is a divisional game, one that kind of feels like it could sink the Chargers ship if it doesn't go their way here.
Yeah, and I apologize. Chargers did host Tampa. I got that mixed up. I guess
it's hard to tell in LA.
I was like, huh. That helps the Chargers out a ton. I mean, they get to stay a short week. You got the Broncos coming into town. Tyson, I'm trying to pull up the playoffs here just to get an idea, because we went through the AFC and
they're all pretty much. I think they're pretty much locked in after the Colts loss here. But it's as far as momentum goes, and we know, if you're a sports guy, it's either real or it's not. I am on the side that it's real. Like, they're not going to get passed by the Colts or the Dolphins as far as playoffs go. But if you're going to be looking forward to a matchup with the Buffalo Bills in the first round, this is like, what's the difference?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I was going to say, because if the Chargers beat the Broncos, which I actually think they're going to do, so we'll do our picks later. We're not going to do picks for Thursday because we record on Thursday. I think the Chargers are going to win this game. That's going to make this extremely interesting in the 5-6 seed, Tyson, especially when we look ahead to this game in the division, Steelers-Ravens, because Ravens are sitting here at 9-5. Steelers are 10-4. They've had a good season. They're coming off the Eagles just put them in a phone booth and beat their ass. Like, that's kind of what that was. It's like, who's going to be more physical? It was the Eagles. Ravens have to win this game, in my opinion. Like, if they go to 9-6, what the hell is going on in Baltimore? I mean, they had to change the defensive coordinator, which we've talked about, but you bring in Derrick Henry. It's not been enough to mask some of the concerns and the issues that they have. But, Baltimore, this to me is a must win at home. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think that, that sounds right to me. And Baltimore is certainly one of the teams. I was talking about the NFC earlier, but they're a scary team that you'd have to play or welcome into your building here in the playoffs. But it just felt like at the beginning of the season, through the first 5 weeks, the Ravens were winning the AFC, and then we were trying to figure out the NFC, and then they kept slowly losing games, but it didn't catch up to him. Nobody cared. Derrick Henry just had one of his worst games as a Raven as far as counting stats go, and he's going up against a really good rush defense here in the Pittsburgh Steelers. This will be a true test of these weapons, I think, for Baltimore, because they don't have a ton of true man beaters. Yes, Mark Andrews is still the man, and Zay Flowers is really good. But are those Rashad Bateman 45-yard bombs where he's kind of getting lost? Is that going to happen against the Pittsburgh Steelers secondary that is just going to assign somebody to guard you? We're not playing some of this other zone stuff that Lamar has just got so good at beating. He just had another game, I think, where it was more touchdowns than incompletions. So he's red hot here as well. I think that Pittsburgh is going to rebound from their game against Philadelphia and offer up a heck of a fight here for Baltimore. And we know one thing about these AFC North matchups, Brad, it's going to be gross. It's going to be slimy. And can Baltimore finally, not have the block punt, not have the fumble that allows Pittsburgh to stay in the game? And with the TJ Watt injury, that's huge to monitor.
It is. And if Baltimore wins this game, they're going to have the same record as the Steelers. Now, if Baltimore wins, they would have the split. So I'm not quite sure how the tiebreaker scenario would work there, but they would at least put themselves in a position to be a division winner, top 4 seed at least, if they're able to win. So that's something to monitor here. I mean, it looked like the Steelers were running away with things, and Baltimore slowly started to creep up on them. Eagles did them a favor this past week. I'm in agreement with you. I mean, let's talk about George Pickens too. If he's not playing, this offense looks completely different. Now, it ain't the Eagles defense they're going to play against in Baltimore, but man, that was pretty eye-opening. So that'll be something to watch. Tyson, another game with huge playoff ramifications in the AFC. Texans face the Chiefs. So this is on Saturday. So, we're going to see what happens here pretty early in this process. But and that's before the Steelers take on the Ravens too. So we can kind of know some shuffling around in the top 4. Texans we're just kind of waiting for, right? Like, what's going on?
You can keep waiting, brother.
Doesn't look the same. Now you got CJ Stroud going outside. There's some question marks. Now, Mahomes is banged up. He practiced in full. Hollywood Brown practiced in full today. He could be back for Saturday. What's your thought? Like, what are you looking for here? Do you think the Chiefs give an effort, or this is a weird game to me?
Well, the Chiefs finally won a game by more than one score, so we can finally stop that whole thing. Yes, they finally. Yeah, I know that sunk you. Unfortunately, here for our pick show, tune in later this week when we do that. Kansas City is just slowly but surely winning the number 1 seed and going to be able to rest these guys the last couple of weeks here of the regular season. I don't expect that to change. I think that the Texans, as much of it is CJ Stroud hit a second-year wall, I think the Bobby Slowick thing is certainly not quite what we envisioned. This isn't your Ben Johnson, he did it again, or some of these other offensive coordinators who turn down head coaching opportunities and come back. I think that he's had some real head scratcher moments. Another week with Nico and those guys getting more reps, but I think this is just a classic Kansas City. Just says we're the big dogs. We've been the big dogs. You guys don't get to sit at the table with us.
I'm curious, man. The Texans are going to be motivated, but everybody's motivated in the NFL, right? You're playing for money, you're playing to represent and earn some checks. But God, to me, this feels like Texans are going to be ready to go, and the Chiefs are kind of like, hey, like you said, we can kind of start taking the foot off the gas a little bit. Let's focus on getting healthy. I think Mahomes is going to play.
It took some moments where Tua took his brain out of his head for them to beat the Dolphins.
That is true. Which is a scary thing. I think I'll tell you this. I'm going to predict it. I think the Texans are going to win this game. This is early. This is before our pick show, but I got a feeling Texans are going to compete, and maybe this is hey, we're still coming here.
Ratings wise, does this outpace the college football games from the day?
Yeah, it's the NFL.
You think so?
Yeah. Our team, our game, Eagles Commanders. Now, early on in the season, and when the Commanders were hot, we were as Eagles fans kind of circling this the classic Eagles go to Washington spot. This could be where the Eagles get tripped up. They've got a lead now to the point it's a 3-game lead. They have the tiebreaker over the Commanders. It's going to take a lot for them to lose. They have to lose this game. And I don't even think they haven't clinched the division yet. I don't believe, Tyson, but it's certainly it would take a monumental collapse if that was the case. So what are you on in this one? I mean, last week the Eagles looked freaking great throwing the football. Saquon Barkley didn't have a huge game, but that's against a really good run defense. They clearly wanted to get the pass going. It was actually Devontae Smith who got the most balls, even though AJ had the most yards. Commanders, after it looked like they were teetering a little bit, won before the bye week, come out of it, had a questionable kind of close game against the Saints. Could have lost at the end. Probably shouldn't have even been there based on the clock. But Commanders starting to rebound a little bit. So what are you eyeing for this one?
I want to see if they can put Terry McLaurin in spots to be successful. He got clamped in the first matchup. They left him on an island with 𝐸 Mitchell, and unfortunately, no boat came to pick him up. I think that's he's the reason they beat the Saints. He's the reason they've won actually a handful of their games this season. He's had another immaculately underrated season as far as the national narrative goes. So you got to get him the ball, and you got to give him the ball in space and in a position to succeed. This Eagles defense is actually going to be fairly well rested. They only had to play for 5 minutes in the second half against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they were awesome to start that game. The Steelers get 2 yards in the first quarter and then a fortunate turnover. You and I, as Eagles fans, we feel like these games are always splits. Philadelphia has actually dominated the series over the last 7 years. I think it's 12-3 or something over the last 15 games. But that doesn't change the fact that this is a team fighting for their playoff live in their building here in Landover. So I think that Washington is, as far as dogs goes, this is one that could bite you. It's one that's wagging its tail. I think that the Commanders are pretty scary. Also, please get the ball to Ben Sinnott. How many times I got to ask, dude? Zach Ertz is in concussion protocol. You draft this guy in the second round from Kansas State. He's a monster in college. I think that actually can help this offense, but I have just been hitting my head against the wall this all season long.
You really have. I think there's a little fantasy implication out there, folks.
I don't got him anymore. I want him. I wish I had him.
It's interesting coming out or entering the bye and coming out right. When the Eagles were clamping the Commanders, the whole thing was Jaden Daniels got to push the ball down the field. He's taking dinks and dunks, and he's not pushing the ball down the field, and that's what you need to do. And against the Eagles, God, you're not going to have success. Coming out of that, McLaurin's been a featured part, like you highlighted. I mean, just against the Saints, 7 catches, 73 yards, 2 touchdowns. They're operating at a high level, but with each other. So I think he is going to be more of a factor here. Now, we saw Adam Thielen, we saw 𝐬𝐫𝐞𝐫𝐤 get a little bit open on the backside against the Eagles. We kind of highlighted that as a sleepy game. I think we'd have been a little bit more confident if Pickens played against the Steelers. But, this is the defense for the Eagles that – throw out what was happening last year. It's a completely different unit, and they're one of the best in the NFL. So I think there's going to be another tough game for the Commanders.
Jaden Daniels has Rookie of the Year locked up at minus 4,000. There's nothing that can happen that changes that, correct?
I don't think so at this point.
I think so too.
Let's close here. Vikings Seahawks, another massive game with playoff implications. How many times we got to say this is the point we're at in the season, baby? Sam Darnold continues to prove the doubters wrong, and I'm one of them. I think he's great under Kevin O'Connell. I'm not quite sure what his future holds, man. You don't draft J.J. McCarthy where you draft him and then stick with Sam Darnold. That's just kind of where you're at.
They knew they had this guy in the building when they took him at 10.
I don't think so either. And God, man, coaching. Kevin O'Connell is one of those guys, man. You just want him to.
So speaking of coaching, Brad, you said here last week, and you were tongue in cheek a little bit, but you were, saying Zach Charbonnet had a heck of a game against Arizona, and look for him in the run game here. He gets the ball twice in the first quarter, 4 times in the first half. He finishes the game with averaging 12 yards a carry, whatever it was. Ryan Grubb didn't want to run the football. It is December in the NFL. It is time to run the football because with the Geno Smith injury and Sam Howell versus Brian Flores, whether it's a banged up Geno or Sam Howell, the guy that just got sacked at a rate never seen before in the NFL, they have to run the ball if they want to win the game. I know it's a first-year head coach and a first-year coaching staff essentially across the board. That's a really scary place to be for the Seattle Seahawks right now because it goes against their DNA.
Yeah, 8 carries for Charbonnet for 54 and a touchdown, and you don't freaking run him more than that. It's nuts, especially against the Packers defense. It's not like they're world beaters stopping the run. I mean, it was shocking. So, what are you going to do here? I mean, we'll see with Geno. I think he's going to play. No indication that he's going to miss this game. But if you have Sam Howell, you might as well cook it. You might as well kiss this game goodbye because he ain't going to handle the Brian Flores blitzes coming at him very well.
How many backup quarterbacks in the NFL right now are worse than Sam Howell? We love him.
Oh,
we were wrong, brother. He is bad.
He's bad. I'd have to do a deep dive on that because not very many. And you know what's funny, Tyson? I was thinking when we talked about the Levis thing, I'm like, God, is he just going to turn into the Sam Howell, right? You don't want him to come into the game as the backup. That's a problem.
He's an anti-victory cigar. He's the tank commander here. But we're operating under the assumption Geno plays. I do expect Jackson Smith-Njigba to be able to get open on this defense. It's a weird spot to be in when DK Metcalf isn't the first Seahawks wide receiver out of your mouth when you're saying these things. But JSN's been awesome. And this Seahawks defense has corners that can compete with the wide receiver core from the Minnesota Vikings. Not a lot of cornerback groups in the NFL are winning those matchups against Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and Kevin O'Connell puts them in a great spot. If I'm the Vikings and I can get this thing comfortable at some point, I want to keep feeding T.J. Hawkinson, letting him back into the fold, because that's going to be a huge part for them down the stretch here.
I agree. And, the Vikings, man, now they are knocking on that door of the NFC East or the NFC North freaking division. 12-2, same records
seed,
Lions.
all of it.
It's crazy. It is crazy. So we'll see what happens there. Tyson, that's going to do it for our show today. Like, subscribe, and share. We had a ton of stuff we got to, and we got a ton of freaking content coming out for you guys. I mean, we got the holiday stuff. We're going to keep grinding. We got bowl season. That's what we're doing next. First wave. We're going to call it Bowl Game 1 or something. We'll come up with a title, but we got you covered. Opt-outs, thoughts, picks, all that good stuff. Later, we covering the college football playoff. I mean, first iteration, we got to do it of this 12-team format, so we got a ton of good ideas for you. We're going to be covering that out of the ass. And then later, we got NFL picks. Tyson scraped by another winning week. I got to get my together. We got to turn this baby around with 3 weeks to go. So that's why you got to stay subscribed. Like the show on the way out if you're watching on YouTube. Share it with a friend. Share it with an enemy, however you want to do it. We'll talk to you later in this bowl episode. So we'll speak to you then, guys. Peace.